November 13th, 2021. AEW is holding its Full Gear pay-per-view event from the Target Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page are battling it out for the AEW World Heavyweight Championship. These two have shared blows for the better part of a half an hour. Why do these two former friends get to this spot? How did we get here? Oop. We gotta rewind this one. So, right off the bat, there's a couple different factors that make this feud different than the ones that we've covered thus far. Obviously, this is much closer to current times. This takes place, obviously, in AEW. AEW's only been around for 5 years as of the recording of this video, so during the time of this feud, the story actually sort of starts before AEW. And the story, by and large, is not necessarily a rivalry per se. Now, hold with me. Bear down. What this story is sort of Hangman Adam Page's coming-of-age story from a relatively unknown independent wrestler to possibly a world champion. The Hangman Adam Page that we see today, that is a bona fide main event talent that has had a pretty bloody and iconic feud recently with Swerve Strickland. Going back a couple years ago, Hangman was not in the spot he was. Hangman was a fledgling independent wrestler on the East Coast independent circuit and in Ring of Honor back in sort of the second generation Ring of Honor days. Hangman's first really big come up in the wrestling world is befriending the Young Bucks, and the Young Bucks inviting him into their Bullet Club group that they were a part of. Now, if you don't know who Bullet Club is, just go down to your local Hot Topic and buy a t-shirt. Oh, no, but just kidding. Bullet Club was, and still is, sort of, but not really. But for a number of years, for the better part of a decade, in the 2010s, Bullet Club was the top Gaijin stable in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Gaijin being a Japanese term meaning foreigner, and attributed to wrestlers who are not of Japanese heritage. Formers, typically over the years, a lot of Americans, but pretty much anybody. Now, in this time frame, we're talking 2015, 2016, 2017. The leader of the Bullet Club was Kenny Omega. If you don't know who Kenny Omega is, pause this, go Google him, come back in a couple days after you've watched all of his awesome matches, and then we'll pick up. I'll wait. Okay, we're back. So at this point, Kenny hadn't achieved the godlike status that some would attribute to him nowadays. But at this point, he's still in that A tier of wrestler. He's still at the top of his game. And most importantly, he is the leader of the Bullet Club. He is sort of the, I don't want to say teacher to Hangman, but in a way, Hangman sort of idolizes him. Maybe not overtly, maybe not in a way that you can really see concretely. This is a talent who was at the top of his level, who has conquered a couple different Japanese promotions. He's on his way to conquering New Japan Pro Wrestling. And Kenny sort of takes all of Bullet Club under his wing and propels him to heights that the previous two leaders, Prince Devitt, who became Finn Balor, and AJ Styles, who became AJ Styles in WWE, respectively, that these guys didn't get to. And it wasn't because either Finn or AJ were holding back Bullet Club. It was because all of New Japan was really hot. AJ's feud with both Shinsuke and Tanahashi in New Japan, for example, had elevated all of the boats, so to speak, of the wrestling talent. And Kenny was about to embark on his infamous set of matches with Okada in a couple years. But of course, we're not talking about New Japan. We're talking about Kenny and Hanger's feud from AEW. So to jump forward a little bit to 2018, 2019, the elite faction of the Bullet Club being Omega, the Young Bucks, Hangman, Cody Rhodes, and Marty Scurll, who we'll just sort of push off to the side because he's fucking creepy. The elite branch off, and with the help of billionaire Tony Khan, they form AEW. What happens is Kenny, the Young Bucks, and Cody, they all get the additional title of EVP within the company. Hangman does not. Now, I don't know if he was offered and he refused, if he was never offered, if he wasn't, and maybe still isn't, interested in general. But as far as at least kayfabe story building context, he's the one member of the group of wrestlers that came over from New Japan that didn't get any type of ancillary title. However, Hangman is positioned to battle with Chris Jericho to see who becomes the inaugural AEW World Heavyweight Champion. Now, it became commonplace during their time in New Japan for the Young Bucks to accompany Kenny to the ring for his matches. I mean, they are part of a stable, of course. Why wouldn't you accompany your stablemate / best friend to the ring for a big match? Hangman does ask the Young Bucks to accompany him along to the ring for his match versus Jericho, and they decline. Hangman subsequently loses this match, and Jericho becomes the first AEW World Heavyweight Champion. Was Hangman really ready to be the first champion for this fledgling company? Maybe not, but it was the start of a sort of downward spiral. After this, because of his shame of not being able to A, win the title, and B, live up to the level of the rest of his stablemates, Hangman tries to quit the elite. The Young Bucks won't let him. They simply refuse, and to deal with his pain and his shame, Hanger starts to hit the bottle. And much in the same way that drinking beer got Steve Austin and the Sandman over, drinking might just get young Hanger over. He actually does adopt the nickname Anxious Millennial Cowboy. And it's not hard to imagine why, with the younger audience of wrestling fans, why Hangman wouldn't get over. He's full of self-doubt. He's always measuring himself up to other people's accomplishments while not really enjoying the fruits of his own labor. He's always looking for outside validation for his own achievements. I mean, if this isn't anybody under the age of 35 that you know, I don't know who is. To make his cowboy friend feel a little bit better, Kenny forms a tag team with Hangman. There is a major point of contention which grows the rift over time between Kenny and Hanger. Kenny, for the most part, is pretty straight edge. Doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't do any nefarious activities of that nature. Whereas Hanger is literally taking beers out of fans' hands and chugging them mid-match, maybe? I honestly can't remember if he did it mid-match once, but I'm pretty sure he did. It sounds like something Hangman would do, but I digress. The team of Hanger and Kenny actually get over pretty well. I mean, two beloved characters, what's not to like? They face SCU in January of 2020 on the Chris Jericho cruise for the tag titles, and they win. It's pretty big. Behind the scenes, and mostly on their Being the Elite YouTube series, the Bucks and Paige, they're sort of going at it, and this comes to a head at Revolution 2020 in February. The Bucks and Omega Hangman. For the research for this episode, I was trying to come up with a good amalgamation name of Omega and Hangman, and I just can't do it. And I thought I'd try it midway through this episode, and, well, now shit's falling off the rails. So, Revolution 2020, Bucks versus Omega and Hanger, and, well, Omega and Hanger retain. This is a fantastic match, and there is huge fallout after this. This is pretty much where the Bucks are not kicking him out quite yet, but they're thinking about it, and they're definitely shit-talking him. They do refer to him as nothing but a jobber before he joined the Bullet Club. More than a few times, which is adding fuel to the fire. Once again, still building to the feud. During this whole time, Hanger is spiraling, to put it lightly. New entries to the company of AEW, FTR, befriend Hanger because, unlike Kenny, who is straight edge, FTR do like to drink a little bit, and they're those sort of Southern East Coast guys too, and they befriend Hanger and manipulate him like a fool. FTR and the Young Bucks are going to have a match to determine the number one contender for AEW's Tag Team Championships during the August 7th, 2020 episode of Dynamite, which is the Homecoming Dynamite. FTR and the Young Bucks are having a match to determine the number one contender for the AEW Tag Team Championships. Hanger interferes in the match to keep the Bucks from winning. It's one of the guys that he doesn't want to have to face his friends anymore. He doesn't want to have to beat up his family. This does allow FTR to win, and the next month at All Out, FTR reveals that they've played Hanger like a cheap fiddle, and they beat Hanger and Kenny clean for the titles at All Out on September 5th, 2020. This is going to end their Tag Team Championship reign at 228 days. And Kenny is going to leave a exhausted and beaten Hanger in the middle of the ring. 2 months later, at Full Gear 2020, we are in the final stages of a tournament to determine the number one contender for the World's Heavyweight Championship, currently held by Jon Moxley. The finals, of course, come down to Hangman and Kenny. And who do you think wins? Kenny. Of course, this causes Hanger to spiral even harder. He starts hitting the bottle more. But all hope is not lost. The Dark Order come in to try to recruit Hanger. The Dark Order are a loose collection of misfits that were brought under the umbrella of a cult leader named Brody Lee. I'm not sure if there was plans down the line for Brody and Hanger to have a feud, or really for Hanger to sort of quote-unquote free the Dark Order under the grip of Brody Lee. Of course, as we all know, sadly, Brody Lee passes away. We don't see the end to maybe a potential storyline. But what we do have is the Dark Order sort of going from C-level goofy guys to almost like beloved baby faces, and it's partly, unfortunately, because of Brody's tragic passing. But you can't help but think that it's partly because of Hanger and the fact that everyone is just feeling for this guy, and His emotionality when he's in front of the camera is just so raw. He has that sad puppy look down like a mother. Conversely, Kenny is gonna go on a mega run. He did win that number one contenders match, and at Winter is Coming, which aired on December 2nd, 2020. You remember that Winter is Coming? That was the one that Sting debuted. Sting just retired. Damn. But I digress. On this episode, not only does Kenny win the title from Moxley to become the AEW World's Heavyweight Champion, but he does so by cheating. And he cheats with the help of Don Callis, who was the most carny, smarmy, slimiest motherfucker ever to be in wrestling on my TV in 2020, who's not named Vince McMahon. How about that? But Kenny goes on a run for the ages. Not only is Kenny holding the AEW World's Heavyweight Championship, he also concurrently holds the AAA Mega Championship, AAA being one of the big two lucha federations in Mexico. Kenny is also going to battle Rich Swann and beat him for the Impact World Heavyweight Championship. Kenny holds 3 of the top belts from 3 major promotions in North America simultaneously. And he defends all of these titles across all of these different promotions, pay-per-views, and TV shows. It's truly amazing. It's maybe one of the reasons why Kenny is injured now. I know he does have diverticulitis. Thoughts go out to you, Kenny. But you can see how the differences between these two competitors would sort of help drive this narrative. While they were a great tag team together, once they divided, Hangman fell down into this pit of despair, while Kenny launched himself into the stratosphere of god-tier wrestling acumen that we haven't seen since Ultimo Dragon held all those titles back in the late 90s. And if you know, you know. Now, Hangman doesn't necessarily want to be a part of the Dark Order. They do incessantly try to recruit him, and he simply states that he doesn't want to be part of a group anymore, considering the group he just came out of and that whole dynamic. Can't really blame him. However, the Dark Order are great friends, and they go to bat for the Hangman. Kenny is in the middle of the ring on an episode of Dynamite, bloviating about how he's such a great champion that he needs to stop wrestling on AEW so often and defend the 2 other belts that he's holding, and maybe rightfully so. The Dark Order come out and sort of infer that they're going to throw Hangman's cowboy hat into the ring, so to speak. Kenny does insinuate that even Hangman doesn't believe that he deserves to hold the world title. This really drives home how maybe some of Hangman's insecurities are well-founded. Well, finally, Hangman and the Dark Order have had enough of the Elite. At the Fight for the Fallen TV special, Hangman and Dark Order are going to team up to battle the Elite and the Good Brothers in a 10-man tag. This doesn't work out too well for the Dark Order and Hanger because they lose. Just a few weeks later, the Elite do beat down Hangman on the Homecoming episode of Dynamite 2021, and Hangman is gone for a while. Granted, he's gone in real life for the birth of his son, but he's off our TV, and the Elite in full heel mode are just running roughshod, and you don't forget about Hangman, but you're sort of wondering when the Hanger's going to come back. And we don't have to wait too long. On the October 6th episode of Dynamite, a casino ladder match is held to determine the number 1 contender for the World Championship. Notice how there's a lot of number one contenders matches? Goddamn. Anyway, October 6th episode of AEW Dynamite. The Casino Ladder match features 6 known entrants and 1 surprise entrant to determine the number one contender for the World Heavyweight Championship. And goddamn, wouldn't you guess it, the surprise 7th entrant in this ladder match is Hanger. And he climbs that ladder and he grabs that damn chip. Because what's coming up after this? That's right, Hanger's opportunity to cash in. Full Gear 2021, November 13th from the Target Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota. These men not only both get iconic entrances, with Hangman riding his horse through the quiet, dark streets of Minneapolis to the arena. Well, Kenny gets that classic Justin Roberts entrance. Goddamn, I missed that entrance. What I didn't miss was this match, because I watched every second of it a couple times. You know why? Because this match is a goddamn banger. Going back to Dave Meltzer, he gave this 5.5 stars. On my own rating scale, I gave it 3,000 out of 10. It's a really awesome match. And at the end, who's going to win? After 30 minutes, it might have taken Hangman hitting Kenny's own one-winged angel finish, a buckshot to the front, a buckshot to the back, and another buckshot lariat to the front to put Kenny down for that 1-2-3. But Hangman finally overcame the personification of his insecurities in Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega was everything that Hangman always wanted to be, and was everything that Hangman didn't think that he was. This was a story where if you wanted to plant deep, deep seeds, took 5-ish years to pay off. If you want to just keep it to AEW and their canon of events and their timeline, this was a storyline that did take 2 years to pay off. AEW started in 2019 under the guise of being an alternative to the WWE. And at the time, WWE wasn't doing real long-term stories. You have to remember, this was before and in the early stages of the Bloodline storyline happening. For Kenny and Hangman, this story was played out over various media sources, for better or for worse. It was played out over the course of not only numerous months, but numerous years. One big thing to remember about this story was we did have to deal with a pandemic right in the middle, smack dab dead center of the story, which can throw off everybody's perception of time, yours truly included. But regardless, this is a long burn story where it really made Hangman sort of the main character in a way for AEW Dynamite the first couple years. There were other major stories happening, Cody versus MJF being one that I could think of just off the top of my head that was pretty epic. But in the early stages, we were waiting to see Kenny on our TVs in America. We were waiting to see the Young Bucks on our TVs in America. We wanted to see Cody Rhodes on our TVs again in America. We didn't necessarily know what we were going to get with Hangman. At least speaking personally, I wasn't too deep into Ring of Honor or New Japan really before AEW started. Of course, I watched New Japan matches and knew of New Japan, but I didn't really appreciate the depth of the roster at certain times in their lineage. And granted, during the early stages of his career in New Japan, Hangman probably wouldn't have been on my radar, just being brutally honest. However, with the help of this story and the years that have followed, Hangman has endeared himself into a spot in my heart that I didn't know he would ever occupy. And for that, Hangman, thank you. Kenny, as always, is one of the GOATs, and I always love anything Kenny does. He has this sense of comedic quality to him that's just goofy. He's a real-life anime character, and I like it. This long story of the anime protagonist and the anxious millennial cowboy was one for the ages. It was one that was utterly necessary to propel AEW from startup company to legitimate contender and promotion in the wrestling landscape. And it helped both cement Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page as main event level talents. And it was fantastic. And with that, that was the Feud Rewind for the week. I want to thank you for listening. I greatly appreciate it. If you want to hit me up, get at me. Any of the social medias, I'm on as Feud Rewind. You can email me, feudrewind@gmail.com. I'm your host, Benza Lance. Once again, I appreciate you listening. I'll see you next time and next week for another Feud to Rewind.